governor's daughter Ava arrives at the airport with her bodyguard Brandon. There she meets her friends, Jed and Kyle. The three of them are going on a trip together, but the boys are unhappy that Brandon is coming too. Ava explains that her father wouldn't have allowed her to travel without security. Once they get on the plane, Ava and her friends choose to sit in the back for some privacy. Soon after takeoff, the plane shakes a little, but it seems normal. However, after a few moments, they notice the engine is heating up. The pilot reassures the passengers that they accidentally hit some birds, but says there's no danger. But then, the shaking starts again, and one of the engines catches fire. The pilot quickly tells everyone to fasten their seatbelts. People begin to panic as a piece of the engine breaks off and hits the side of the plane, causing a sudden change in air pressure. Passengers who haven't buckled up are thrown from their seats, even when they try to hold on to others. Within seconds, a part of the plane's wall rips off, creating a huge hole. Many passengers are sucked out and fall to their deaths. With most of the passengers gone, the plane starts descending rapidly. It crashes into the ocean, and water immediately floods the cabin. The force of impact pushes the seats forward, crushing several passengers. The plane sinks for a few minutes before stopping when it gets stuck on the seabed. Because the plane is tilted at an angle, an air pocket forms in the plane, allowing Ava, her friends, and flight attendant Danilo to survive. However, Kyle suffers a broken bone in his arm. Suddenly, Brandon emerges from the water, bringing two more survivors, Rosa and her unconscious grandmother, Marty. Danilo performs chest compressions on Marty, and after a few tense minutes, she wakes up. The group starts panicking, but Brandon quickly takes charge, reminding everyone that the air pocket is keeping them safe for now. He urges them to stay calm and wait for rescuers. Ava checks her phone, but there's no signal underwater. She suggests swimming out through the hole in the plane, but Brandon explains that their chances of survival are too low. He insists that staying put is the safest option. Danilo reassures them that the pilots must have sent a distress call before the crash, so help should arrive soon. Brandon then mentions they should secure a backup oxygen supply just in case. Danilo recalls that the plane has 2 emergency oxygen tanks stored at the back. However, upon checking, he finds them both empty. At that moment, Marty remembers that one of the passengers had a medical oxygen tank, and Brandon immediately volunteers to retrieve it. He dives into the flooded parts of the plane, checking the bodies of passengers who died in their seats, not noticing something swimming outside the window. Then, he locates the oxygen tank and grabs it. As he investigates the hole in the plane, he decides to look around for any other useful items. Suddenly, a shark enters through the hole and attacks him. Brandon struggles against the shark, trying desperately to escape. Meanwhile, the others see ripples in the water and realize something is wrong. Suddenly, Brandon surfaces, gasping for air. He tells the others to stay back and reveals his severe wounds. Despite his pain, he hands them the oxygen tank and apologizes to Ava. Before anyone can react, the shark drags him back into the water. The group watches in horror as they see the shark's tail sticking out while it devours Brandon. They retreat to the employees' area, agreeing to follow Brandon's advice and wait for rescue. Marty then offers to treat Kyle's broken arm, explaining that she used to be a nurse during wartime. Kyle screams as Marty resets his bone and makes a splint using thick magazines and bandages. Above the ocean, a helicopter flies over the crash site, searching for the plane. Since the governor's daughter is among the passengers, the search is a high priority. However, they haven't spotted anything yet. Back inside the plane, the survivors hear creaking sounds, and the plane shifts slightly. Suddenly, they notice the water turning red and realize that sharks have entered the plane and are feasting on the drowned bodies. Rosa gets scared, but Ava reassures her, saying she's confident they will be rescued soon. The helicopter is still searching, but hasn't found the plane yet, and its fuel is running low. Meanwhile, the group watches the water level rising and estimates they have about 3 to 4 hours before it reaches them. However, they also hear the metal creaking and see water leaking through the ceiling, making them unsure if the plane will last that long. Realizing the seabed isn't as stable as they thought, the group agrees they have no choice but to swim out. They need a way to distract the sharks, and Rosa remembers learning in school that sharks don't like bubbles. But they also have to hold their breath for a long time, which is difficult. Kyle suddenly remembers that some passengers had scuba gear. Danilo explains that the equipment is in the baggage hold, but the tanks are likely empty, as they wouldn't have been allowed on board otherwise. Outside, the helicopter finally spots floating plane debris, so 2 divers jump into the water to investigate. They quickly find the plane, and the survivors start waving at them through the window. One diver approaches the hole, while the other signals to the group that help has arrived. Suddenly, a shark sneaks up behind him. The survivors try to warn him, but when he turns around, the shark attacks and drags him down. The group looks out and sees the diver's leg floating away. They check the corridor, hoping the second diver is still alive, but he never appears, so they assume he's dead too. Meanwhile, the helicopter is almost out of fuel and has no choice but to leave. At least they now have the plane's coordinates, and backup is on the way. Ava suggests that if the other diver is dead, they might be able to take his oxygen tank. Jed tries to get a closer look by standing on the seats, but slips and falls into the water. The others panic when they can't see him, but he soon resurfaces, revealing it was all just a prank. Unfortunately, he doesn't get out in time, and a shark finds him. As the shark bites down, the group rushes to grab Jed's arms and pull him back to safety. However, they realize he has lost a leg. Marty takes Rosa behind the curtain while she tends to Jed's wound. She uses seatbelts to create a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Still determined to escape, Ava volunteers to retrieve the scuba gear. Danilo opens the hatch, and Ava dives in with a flare to search. The others get worried when they no longer see her light, but soon, Ava returns with the gear. The group opens the bags and finds diving suits and masks, but there are only 4. Suddenly, they hear something hitting the plane and rush to check the window. Seeing no divers, they realize it must be a shark. When they turn back around, they find Jed has already died. Ava tries to revive him with chest compressions, but Marty stops her, making her accept the truth. The plane begins sliding again, but this time it stops because the cockpit breaks off, acting as an anchor. The water is rising faster now, so they must leave immediately. Remembering Rosa's fact about bubbles, they plan to use the small oxygen canisters from the emergency masks to scare the sharks. However, the swimming distance is a challenge. The sharks continue ramming into the plane, and the ceiling starts cracking. The group begins changing into the scuba suits, and Marty volunteers to go without one, saying she would only slow them down. After saying a final goodbye to Jed, the survivors enter the water, noticing the plane is beginning to slide again. Suddenly, the cockpit fully detaches and falls into the deep ocean, meaning the plane will follow soon. Marty tells Ava to take Rosa and go first. As the girls swim through the corridor, they encounter a shark blocking their path. They quickly open an oxygen canister, releasing bubbles that scare it away. Once the path is clear, they continue swimming, with Kyle and Danilo soon following. Marty watches them go as the water level rises and realizes she won't make it. She stays behind, waiting to reunite with her husband. Kyle suddenly panics and swims back to reach the last pocket of air. Danilo tries to go after him, but a shark emerges from the baggage hold and devours Kyle in seconds. Terrified, Danilo swims back to Ava and Rosa. Meanwhile, Ava finds the dead diver and takes his oxygen tank to refill her lungs. She gives the tank to Rosa and Danilo, sending them through the hole first. Just as she is about to follow, a shark blocks her way. Ava quickly swims back and freezes, hoping the shark won't notice her. Luckily, it enters the plane without seeing her, but its tail knocks off her mask. Realizing more sharks are coming, Ava swims toward the front of the plane. As the plane begins sinking faster, the water pressure makes it hard to move, but she manages to push through and escape through the front hole just before the plane disappears into the deep. Ava starts swimming to the surface, but she soon runs out of air and passes out. Her body stops moving, but the gear she's wearing pushes her upward. As soon as she reaches the surface, she gasps for air and wakes up. Ava looks around, but doesn't see the others. Just then, helicopters arrive and pull her out of the water. Danilo and Rosa have already been rescued. Rosa asks about her grandmother, and Ava has to break the heartbreaking news. In a final farewell to her grandparents, Rosa throws her toy into the ocean before falling asleep in Ava's arms.